So I'm here with Steve Whittington, who is the Executive Vice President of Flaman Group of Companies, Chairman of the Board of Flaman Fitness, and author of the book Thriving in the Customer Age. And Steve is going to answer some interview questions for me about emerging trends in marketing. So the first question I have is, what trends do you see emerging in the area of marketing?
Well, there are so many today that are happening in just if you break out different technology aspects. But what I really would say is, to me, there's two big areas, and they're all to do with the customer, which would seem obvious if you're in marketing. But marketing in the past was primarily responsible for the buyer's journey and customer acquisition. But now what I see happening is that marketing is getting more involved in the end-to-end entire customer journey. So all the way from awareness, consideration, and acquisition, so coaching sales on techniques that they could be using to close more deals, to then when you get to the after sale and retention and reputation management, voice of customer, reactivation. That's that whole end-to-end customer journey now is falling under CMOs, and these CMOs are being looked at by the CEOs, or even becoming CEOs now than ever before. It used to be a very small part of the C-suite from CMO that went to CEO, as like, you are the ones driving revenue and also retaining your customers. And that's become more important when you look at a lot of the models that are emerging in business today, the subscription economy. So the ability to attract and retain customers and continue to market to customers and build on their journeys and a life, basically life cycle management is falling under marketing. You can see how that's getting more and more important. And the second big trend, again, is to do with customers, and it's customer data and what the customer data is doing to allow for technology to be used more effectively. So we've all heard of AI, and we've heard of big data, and we've heard all that stuff. None of that works. No predictive analytics. None of that works without clean, good customer data. And of course, then customers want privacy, yet they want to give their data so they get stuff that's specific to them. They want to be marketed to a market of one, not a market of many. So it's really the two big macro things are all to do with customers. Customer journey end to end and customer data.
Have you heard any complaints? So from what you have said, have you heard any complaints about the customer getting too narrow a look at what a company offers because the AI has targeted them too directly?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So that again falls under the experience that you're creating. So you have to, if you're going to be an organization that is fully standing in a place of responsibility, where you're 100% responsible for the experience that you're creating, having used some AI ourselves in the various organizations that I'm involved in, you have to look at what the experience is being created. Now, we have chosen to back off on some AI initiatives because we felt it was only a 7 out of 10 experience. And we actually did polling, and sometimes it was 5 or 4 out of 10. Not a great experience. So it's either too narrow, or it's not specific enough, or it's too repetitive. And with marketing automation, you can set how many times that a person gets marketed to.
Right.
They can see the specific ad 3 times. And the other thing that's not really discussed is when you take classic marketing automation and you say, okay, well, this person browsed on this product page, that was last, so we're going to retarget them with that ad 5 times in the month. That doesn't mean they actually wanted that product. That was just the last one they landed on.
Right.
Now you're retargeting them, or however you set it to be. So you have to be constantly iterating and constantly testing. And that's the other, I guess, again, around customer and customer data, is that if you're looking at improving your customer experience and your customer journey, that means continual experimentation.
Okay. So my next question was about, do you feel that these trends are the result of changes or advancement in technology? And I think that's self-evident.
Yeah.
But is technology what's really driving this, or is it the customer, or is it the companies?
So it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. So the more data that becomes available, being captured by various devices, Internet of Thing, companies putting in software platforms and CRMs and plowing in more data, and then integrating the tech stacks from enterprise resource planning, like your financial software, your CRM, your marketing automation, all your web analytics, and all that stuff being nice, fully integrated in a tech stack. That's all technology driven, powered by data. Okay, so is technology powering this change? Absolutely. As more data gets available, more people see things they can do and how they can reach customers and give more privatized type experiences. Absolutely, technology is driving it. But again, of the trends that I'm talking about, customers and customer journey, customers are demanding this kind of stuff as well. So the interesting thing is, or the challenging thing for small to medium enterprises, is that they're not competing with, Joe's local store or the local manufacturer, whatever it might be. And we've all heard about globalization, but the experience is being set by Amazon, by Walmart and Jet, and by whatever it might be, by Nordstrom, by Disney. That's the bar that's being set. So these world-class experiences are setting the bar for a local 3-chain retailer in Edmonton, and they have to compete with that. So customers are driving it as well.
And can they compete? Are the small companies going to be able to compete?
I believe they can, and there are a lot of examples of companies that are focusing on that. And we have a Canadian company like Shopify, for instance, that is focusing on that and focusing how to provide fulfillment for goods to compete with Amazon warehouses. And then there is, well, if we just acknowledge that there is no good that you cannot get almost instantly. So what you have to your service or your, more like your good, is no longer can provide competitive advantage. The only thing, and even if you take like hotel chains or restaurants or whatever, what is a competitive advantage which cannot be duplicated by some of the bigger forces in our economy, Amazon being one of them, the Amazon effect, is the customer experience. It's the how you make your customer feel. And then from a marketing point of view, you set the tone, you set that up by creating the brand experience and then helping the whole organization meet that brand experience, and then gathering data on it through all these new technology tools so that you can continue with that journey and create a remarkable experience that's not forgotten about. And here's the cool thing, you don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on acquisition marketing because they're going to do it for you. They're going to tell their friends and family to go there.
Right.
Yeah. So yes, I truly believe we can compete. Small and medium enterprise.
So my next question, do you feel these trends are the result of changes in consumers?
Well, yes. So technology that consumers are using are creating expectations. Consumers are seeing what they want from international brands, are creating a higher level of expectation. And then consumers, like we're like 15 years on from a lot of these online platforms scraping our data. And there's been breach after breach after breach, and it's kind of like expected that someday somebody's going to steal my information. And consumers don't care all that much as long as they don't take away your financial information and clean out your bank account. But more so, if you use my information to make a better experience for me, to curate an experience so that it's more convenient for me, it has less friction in the experience because I don't have as much time as I used to, have my data. So yeah, they're really a big driver, absolutely.
And do you think there's any generational component to this as to which consumers are more likely to hand over the data?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the stats on that with different generations. And it's not necessarily derived a young versus old kind of map. I think some of the youngest generations are less trusting of brands. But at the end of the day, if the brand creates trust, the consumer will give its trust. And, old McDonald has a phone and he's on Facebook. So, in fact, like, you take farmers, a farming family has more phones than urban families because, well, just think about how they have to communicate on a large farm spread out over lots of territory. They have to have phones and they're checking the weather and all that stuff. So I don't think there's generational issues. I mean, obviously there are, but with some stats on that. But basically when it comes down to the experience you provide, the customers will do what's needed to get the experience they want.
Yeah, I just wondered if it had anything to do with how baby boomers have treated their children like they're all special, and so now they expect brands to treat them like they're special.
Well, that's a great question, and one I almost don't want to dive into.
And that's okay if you don't, because I didn't prep you with that question.
Yeah,
so,
no, fair enough. It's a whole other ball of wax, so to speak, or ball of worms. But I think in general, though, what's happening is consumer expectations have risen because of the fact that we have so much choice. So let's look at television, just basic network television. At one point, not that long ago. I mean, I'm not millennial, or I'm getting a little older. I'm an older Xer, but I still remember 3 stations. I remember that I didn't have choice. Right?
Yeah.
Now, there's no end to the choice I have. So, as a consumer, what are my expectations now? It's you have to be specific to me, like there's a channel specifically for what I want, and I can find that content exactly on YouTube for free, right? So you need to entertain me, you need to delight me, otherwise you're not going to get my attention, you're not going to get my dollars. So whether, my parents, which were boomers, have spoiled me, which I would argue growing up in northern Canada that they did not, but I think just the choice has spoiled us all. And that's our reality. We have to be excellent to thrive.
Right. So, are there any other factors that you feel are having an influence on these trends, such as political factors, economic?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, from an economic point of view, which is really interesting, is that while the economics for, call it regional retailers or regional brands, is getting tougher, at the same time, the opportunity has never been greater because you have access to the world, and individuals can literally make their own path. I mean, with the rise of the gig economy, and so economics is definitely influencing how consumers make choice, which then influences how we market to consumers and how we interact with consumers, and at the end of the day. It's the organizations that decide to invest in becoming customer centric that are going to survive and thrive, and there's a lot of data around that. Now, married to that, which this is about marketing, but your customer satisfaction is directly correlated to your employee satisfaction. Makes sense. If you got a staff that is not happy, how are they going to treat the customers, right? So you think about this. If you're a marketer, that's why I'm saying marketers are becoming more responsible for the end-to-end customer journey. You can acquire as many customers as you want through the various methods, using social, and using programmatic, and using SEM and SEO, and the list goes on, and marketing automation, and putting in all these different CRMs, and all those tools are amazing, and then getting better on your content marketing, and right? But you got to take care of the experience that's being provided by the brand, and marketers are being held responsible for that, and are supposed to coach, saying, well, what's the data? How can you teach us? How do we get better? Give us the voice of the customer.
Right.
So, yeah.
Do you think, like for myself, I think that our laws and our politicians are not keeping up with what's really happening in the marketplace.
Yeah. There needs to be continued vigilance on consumer protection. I do not have any issue with Castle at all. I think it's valid and appropriate, and however, I don't think it's fully enforced, and it ought to be. And certain black hat marketing techniques are not punishable by any means, and so yes, there needs to be increased monitoring so that consumers are protected, because the sophistication of the tools are such that consumers can be duped. Certainly with artificial intelligence, that is a concern, and marketers marketers can be very well armed and can influence consumer behavior if they're not ethical in a way that consumers aren't even realizing that they're being influenced. Subtle psychology is being employed with the tools that are being used today.
Yeah, right. So is there any particular way you see some of these trends emerging?
Yes. Well, the one big thing that all marketers I find are struggling with, certainly brands, is the integration of their tech stack. So how do you get, it's all that, you got, okay, I've got this customer data over here, I've got this data over here, I got this data over here, I've got this data over here, I've got my financial information. How do you get it all to talk together? And there's a few companies that are coming and pushing that all together. Salesforce is one of them. Microsoft is another one that's pushing all that stuff. But you're still bolting on a bunch of different services. So the integration of the tech stack is huge, and then having that clean data so that you can actually employ some basics of artificial intelligence, like even just get to predictive analytics before you actually get to machine learning, and then you get to AI. Everybody talks about all that stuff. So that's fantastic. But it all comes down to clean data and then having it linked to other stuff to provide correlation so the insights can occur. And that takes an enormous amount of organizational effort. And a lot of brands are overwhelmed with just how do they do proper hiring practices and keep the lights on and keep the till full of cash and all that other fun stuff. And then you're going to tell me that I have to integrate a tech stack and employ AI, like what the heck, right? So, but all that is emerging, and what you'll see in the next 5 to 10 years is that'll just become a standard. The organizations that are around have these integrated tech stacks, and they're getting more insight and more learning, and those in of themselves, how well they set those up, those integrated tech stacks, to help with marketing automation and insights on their customers and machine learning within their whole ecosystem of their world, will be their competitive advantage. And then all the other tools that are employed, it's like, okay, well, this customer responded well to this type of content. Make sure that you employ this across this, boom, and scale it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think the trends that you've been talking about are only influencing marketing, or are they influencing all businesses in general?
Well, so that's the interesting thing. I see, the organizations that I'm part of, and I'm technically part of like 3 and consult to a lot of different things, is that marketing, it used to be over here, and they were the smart kids that did some flashy ads, and they're responsible for bringing the leads, and sales had to close it, and then sales and marketing were like this, and eventually maybe they started to think about, well, we're smarketing, we'll work together, but now it's like marketing is part of everything, because it's all about the customer experience, which is part of everything, and you're getting true integration happening, and it's a lot of times it's being marketing led, because marketing has had the customer insights that the rest of the organization did not have.
Right.
And so that's really interesting. So is it just a marketing thing? No, it's an organizational thing, even down to nonprofits. I mean, nonprofits need to know their donor profiles to understand, if they're going to donate monthly on a reoccurring basis, or it's an annual give, or it's an end-of-life insurance grab, so to speak, right?
Yes.
So it's every space, every organization is affected by this type of movement.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you completely.
Yeah.
So my next question, I have heard some say that we're slow to change in the West, that Eastern Canada is more progressive, they're ahead of us in adopting, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. How do you feel about that?
Well, so first off, in the West, the challenge that we face is a bit of our mindset. We're a resource-based economy, so our value is dictated by what we pull out of the ground. And we've done really well financially doing that in Saskatchewan and Alberta. I would argue, if you look to the south at a similar political jurisdiction, Texas, they pull a lot of things out of the ground, but they also have a tech hub right in the middle of Austin that arts. There's a lot of startups that have relocated there, and Dallas is emerging. And so they've looked at other resources in their political jurisdiction, their human resources, to provide growth for the future. And it's not whether we're behind Eastern Canada. We have to look at what's happening in the world if we're going to be competitive in the world state. And I believe there's absolutely no reason why we cannot be. Also, we're not that far behind. I mean, the University of Alberta is it ranked number 4 for AI research in the world. DeepMind, Google DeepMind is here in Edmonton. Saskatoon is being called Silicon Prairie because of all the startups that have received a whole bunch of funding out of there for such a little city of 250,000. Like, surely if a city of 250,000 can attract international attention, or you have a hard time getting to the city by plane even, things can happen. So a bit of a mindset has to change. I think we need to think about our human resources as opposed to our natural resources a little more, and that will set the stage for the future, and I don't see why we can't do it.
Good. Our political climate might have to change a little bit for that to happen.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay. Very, very smart of you. All right. So do you have any other comments that you'd like to make or say to the students, or?
Yeah. Looking at your career ahead of you, you need to balance it with traditional skills across the entire organization to end up being a marketer that can create excellence in your organization. You can't just be focused on marketing. You need to understand operations. You need to understand sales. You need to understand aftermarket service. You need to understand the whole end-to-end service. I've done that throughout I've been blessed having a diverse career, and marketing being through it all the way. And that has allowed me to sit at the boardroom table as a marketer many, many times. Not because of just my marketing, but because of my overall organizational service. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Steve, for doing this, and I hope the students get as much out of this as I did.
My pleasure.